Thanks, Tracy. All right. So now that made my mouse not work. Whoop. So as we get into decision making, I first want to tap into the idea of self-determination, because we can't talk about decision making without talking about and truly understanding what self-determination is. So if you get to the basic Webster Oxford definition, it's a process by which a person controls their own life. Self-determination is possible from birth. You can give someone opportunities to grow this skill by having opportunities to make choices, learn about new places and things, build community connections, develop skills, and learn responsibility. But self-determination is really a combination of skills. It's that knowledge and the skills, the knowledge and beliefs that help a person engage in goals, and then more importantly, act on those goals, but within the lens of understanding their own limitations and strengths. So self-determination involves knowing yourself, owning your strengths, weaknesses, needs, and preferences. And it can be part of your journey from the very beginning. So children learning to be self-determined from birth by having opportunities to make choices and develop skills and learn responsibility is ultimately what is going to engage them in that life as an adult that they really want. There's a lot of different skills that go into self-determination, but as you look at this list, you can see why we can't talk about decision making without focusing on self-determination, because we begin very young in getting choices. We know in school, we even see it in our language and special education of how many choices can they make? Can they choose out of 2? Can they choose out of 4? We move into those bigger decisions and discussions, but we really ultimately are talking about problem solving and moving through our day. There's just a lot of times that kids are facing that within their school day, within their expectations, within their academics. And so all of that revolves on the ability to be making choices and decisions, and to be able to do that in a way that we are able to recognize our own wants and desires and the capacity at which to do it, so that we actually are capable of making decisions. So helping a student tap into that and understand that is going to be really important for their success across time and their ability to be autonomous as an adult. So how do we get there? We know through research, the research that's guided the disability field for years, that there's an understanding of one's strengths and weaknesses, and an understanding and acceptance of self that's necessary to move into this place of self-determination and being a strong decision maker. You need to understand yourself. You need to know what's important to you. We also know that self-esteem and perceived competence are necessary for student success. I need to understand that I have value and that I have strengths that are worth sharing and that are actually admirable, right? And I need to know what they are. And not only makes sense that it's this positive sense of self, but that positive sense of self enhances our ability to plan and set goals. If we don't have a positive sense of self, we are not going to see ourselves as someone that can achieve things. And then more importantly, their ability to act on those goals. And that includes taking risks while actually assessing or understanding the need is the supports that are needed for success. So there's a whole nother layer to it, right? And then it's all through these experiences that students can recognize their successes, see them as important, see their ability even to bounce back after a failure or some level of adversity in that process, in that experience. And all those things are going to impact them as they become decision makers, or become barriers when we don't see successes, or how those successes or adversities are perceived or handled by the folks that support us. So keeping in mind that there are many of us that avoid decisions. I laughed. I started thinking about, what decisions do I avoid? And you can put a cheesecake menu in front of me, Cheesecake Factory menu in front of me, and I'm done. I just shut down. When you have more than 2 pages to a menu, forget it. But we all shut down in decision making for lots of different reasons. So yeah, there's a lot of barriers for decision making for all of us, but we can look closely at this list and you can see why kiddos with developmental disabilities may lack or be slower in developing this skill. Look at the decisions, look at this and consider a decision to try something new. So for example, for me, playing the piano. As a child with ADHD, though that was not a thing, so I didn't know I had it, but as a child with ADHD, I started piano lessons 4 different times in my life, from book 1 right away. And when I look at this list, I can see all the reasons I decided to try each time, and I can see all the reasons that I stopped. That idea of fear of failure, that idea of parent influence. So there were recitals and there were places to show up. And my mother had this piano and it was sitting in the house and I was the youngest and nobody was using it. And she would lament this out loud. And so there were all those things that, so that people pleasing, should I or shouldn't I? So there's so many layers to those barriers. That fear of failure for a child with a disability, it's natural, given that it often takes longer or more than one try for us to learn something new, right? So not wanting to disappoint our parents or any other adult for that matter can also prevent a child from making a choice, not to mention not having the depth of knowledge or experience. And that's a huge one, to confidently make a decision, problem solve, or take a risk, because we're not doing as much and we're not trying as many things. And so it feels unfamiliar, and that fear of failure or that perfectionism can often get in the way. So we want to keep an eye on all of those things and consider those. But ultimately, that idea of experiences impacting what I know and what I can tap into is primary for decision making. I don't feel confident and comfortable as a decision maker if I haven't had experiences that I can reflect back on and say, oh, this might happen, or this might happen. So I can't evaluate my choices as well. And in the world of Charting Life Course, we have come to recognize that life experiences lead to life outcomes. The more experiences I have, the more chance I have for what I want to happen, those desirable outcomes, because I can reflect on my experience and begin to make a best guess about what might happen. What this means is when we support students to identify or pursue experiences that are desired, and we help them evaluate the risk to move forward, and we provide the support needed to have these experiences, they're more likely to reach their desired outcome, especially if they're supported and encouraged to problem solve and bounce back, reflect, assess anything undesired that happens along the way, and realign their vision. So often when I talk about this particular slide, I talk about in that vision, if I want to be a rocket scientist, I need to know what those expectations are to be a rocket scientist. And then I have to look at those expectations and go, is that an expectation I want to be held to? Is that an expectation I'm ready for yet? What might I need to do? What my experiences might I need to have? And I begin to tap into those experiences, right? And from those experiences, I look back and go, and I have that opportunity to reassess and reevaluate, and do that with trusted adults, parents, and friends. And I move through this cycle. But I emphasize that statement that the support they need to have the experience is identified and provided. This is important because we often hold children with disabilities back from having experiences until we believe they can be independent. They can't do that yet because there's a risk of something going awry or of a problem. We very seldom are independent. We talk about this a lot in Charting Life Course. We're interdependent. Each one of us had things happen throughout our day to day that we needed help from somebody to keep moving forward. Very few of us get through any of our days without the support of someone else at home or at work or in the community. So interestingly enough, I had a conversation with a family yesterday, and she's working with her school and having a conversation around employment. He's 18, and he is going to continue to he's not going to take his diploma, and he's going to continue to be supported by school. But they said, we really need to look at employment for him. And he's got a pretty good amount of support. And in the conversation, the first reaction was, well, we're going to have to step away from the one-to-one because there's no one-to-one at work. And we have to go back and say, might be someplace we want to end up, but we don't start there. We talk about the vision to not need one-to-one support at work, and we back up the trajectory and say, what are we doing now, and how and what expectations do we want to meet one step at a time, right? To support me making the right decisions across a work environment that would allow me to do it without one-to-one support, or not. And or not does not mean I don't get to work, or not means we just think about how that support fits in, right? So really having that vision for it. So I want to go back. On one of my first slides, I had a quote from a research article by Field and Huffman. And students, they talked about the fact that students who possess self-awareness and self-knowledge recognize their own strengths. They recognize their limitations. They recognize their ability to have a stronger foundation in making effective choices. They know they have confidence in making their choices and their decisions. So moreover, if they can apply this understanding of who they are, they're more likely to improve their previous experiences and accomplishments and have new and better experiences. And in this process, they gain an increasing awareness about how they best learn, how to communicate effectively to have the outcomes they want, and how to appropriately deal with their emotions. But all this kind of comes from that place of knowing themselves and valuing themselves. And that's a skill that needs to be built. And when we come from a deficit model for kids with disabilities who don't hear that, we're hyper aware often of what we aren't able to do. But knowing those things about us that are valuable are super important. So when you look at this, the tool that's visible on your screen, the Trident Life Course Framework and tools are really designed to help you know and value yourself and express that to others. So this is the one-page person-centered description, and that focuses students, families, and educators on understanding and knowing the student. It gives the student opportunities to share their voice, and it allows them to be seen. The image you're seeing is a guidance document that helps people work with this tool, fill it out, and have information in it that's useful and helps the student or the person when they share it with others. And it's in your packet from when you registered. You would have received that as part of your email. And it's a great document to use if you're going to use this tool, because it makes it a richer tool as you go to fill it out. But this is a tool that can be used across time and as a student grows. I always say that the IEP is a living, breathing document, and so is a one-page person-centered description. It also can be used in lots of settings. So you could have one for biology in that biology class, or one for my resource class, but you could also have one for cheer after school, and really help the students share who they are, what's important to them, and how to best support them. I'm going to zoom in here so that you can just see for a second, for those of you, if there's anybody here that hasn't seen the tool before, 3 questions: what people like and admire about me, what's important to me, and how to best support me. So it is a tool that can be used across time. As a student's skills grow, so should the information they share. The depth of information for a younger child may or may not be as extensive as the depth of information for a high school student. But using the questions provided in this tool, we're able to show those things discussed earlier in that research I talked about, to help us become more confident and recognize our ability to make decisions. Things like knowing ourselves, knowing what's important to us, knowing our value and our strengths, along with knowing the supports we need to act with confidence. And that's really what supports do. Supports give us the confidence to try or to do the things that are expected of us. So the skills that are needed to set and attain goals are also things that help you know and value yourself, right? So when a student is trying to set or attain goals, it requires them to identify or decide something they wish to work towards and develop a plan to reach that particular objective. So when you look at this particular trajectory, a second of the Charting the Life course tools, you can see where this student identified a goal to be on student council, right? And that could be a pretty lofty goal for any kid, right? And there might be people that think they can't do it, right? And you can see that right in his trajectory. He says, I don't want people to think I can't do it, right? So when we're learning how to set and attain goals, you want goals to be challenging. You want them to be feasible, though, and you want the objectives of the goal to align with their likes and their dislikes. So what the exploring trajectory that's shown here, which is just the 2 basic boxes, is a really great way to do that. He can recognize where their strengths are, like I love school and I love helping my friends. He recognizes, though, you see it in here, I have a friend I can run with, right? So there could be this dual running of, president, vice president, whatever it is, but recognizing that's really going to add to my confidence. That's going to help me in that space. And then things that I did that I can act, I already submitted my name, right? I don't like to lose and I don't like speeches. Well, those are 2 things that you probably should talk about, whether or not that makes sense, but it helps me evaluate decisions, because then somebody can say, oh, that's interesting, you don't like speeches because there's a whole 4 events or whatever that you have to make speeches. It helps us have that conversation. That's the strength of Charting the Life course. It is very basic, but it encourages those conversations, which is really important. And then you look here, the planning trajectory obviously gets into that planning and action that's so important to making decisions and moving forward and building that confidence of being a decision maker. So when you learn how to set and attain goals, it enables students to better understand and work toward what's most important to them. And you think about this, have you ever seen a student attain something, have something really great that they didn't think they could do, and they very quickly, right away, set a new goal of something they thought they couldn't do? Well, if I did, I'm going to do this. And it's pretty evident that confidence, that surge of confidence of success, encourages them to do it again. And it's this success that assists us in really seeking direction towards what we want in life and being brave enough to take risks and make those decisions that help us lead a more self-determined life where we're making our own decisions. So as we use this tool, we have a vision for what we want, but we identify shorter and more attainable goals for those center 2 boxes for just this reason. And we can build in time for the student to assess what happens, time to regroup if needed, time to add shorter term goals. It's important to support them in considering the process of reaching the goal, but not just focusing on that big result of getting there. Because when we just focus on that, we're more likely to abandon the goal when it doesn't feel like we're going to get there, thus my piano scenario. Or when we run into unexpected failures, we quit along the short-term goals. So when we can recognize the measure, so if you just look briefly here, wanting to be on student council, I've got to take the steps in here that you can, there we go, to ask that friend, if I really feel like that's going to give me the confidence to do this, I've got to ask. And that may be a deal breaker, and I might have to stop and regroup. I might need to find help with those speeches. My friend might say no. Thinking about that ahead of time is going to help me in that moment to decide what I want to do, because I've thought about it and talked about it with others ahead of time. I might change my mind as I learn. And that's something that's super important in decision making, is understanding it's okay to change your mind, to regroup, and to rethink. And I changed my mind so many times with piano, but I kept wanting to go back to it. So it's the ability to really map it out and make those decisions smaller and less daunting, but moving us along the path. But allowing that time for assessment, allowing that time to regroup, allowing that time to talk it out loud with a friend. Those are all things in decision making that allow it to be interdependent And then when we're having bigger conversations around when I am an adult, when I am over 18, what decisions can I make? And how can I set up a life where I'm supported in making those decisions and I have choices in those options that might be afforded to me for that support, whether it be something like a power of attorney or things like that. So I have more choices as I get older if we're talking about these on simpler decisions earlier and building that idea of I need to become a confident decision maker, even if that confidence is knowing who to ask for help. If you want to talk about a sexual relationship with someone, you may not talk to your parents. You may talk to a friend. You may talk to a sibling. I encourage them all to talk to their parents. However, we know that we didn't always talk to our parents about everything. So knowing who that person is as we make choices. And then there's the tools of the support star. And here I'm showing the split integrated support star. And again, that works into that principle of identifying and asking for help. But still part of that planning and acting. So if I wanted to run for student council, you're going to look and help me talk about what personal strengths I think I have and assets I have that are going to make me be able to do that, or which ones do I need? And this gives me that space to talk about maybe I won't win. Maybe if I don't win, I need to work on this particular thing that's in my future strengths or assets. In addition to that, relationships. I have that one friend that will run with me. If he says no, is there someone here that I could ask in my now? Or are there people that I could build relationship with into the future so that I'm able to do that maybe next year? Again, how to use technology, how to use those things that everyone has access to in the community, but really using this tool as a way to think about how I can get help to be able to confidently make a decision. Again, encouraging that interdependence. And it seems natural to me, but I want to say out loud, when you encourage interdependence, you help the student develop relationships that are going to last beyond school. When I develop relationships with people where I'm talking to them about things that matter to me, I'm building intimacy. I'm building a relationship outside of whatever we're doing, whether that's a peer or an adult. We tend to take those people with us in the journey. And when we are surrounded by a group of people who care about us, decision-making is easier because we have an opportunity to go and talk to other people and bring that to bear. And when any one of us make a big decision, we very seldom do it without asking for help with others. We have a lot of people that we engage with and include in that process of decision making. So how do you do this at different levels? And this may be information for the educators that you already know. I just wanted to make sure I included it in here because at different levels, we have different skills, right? And in school, we're focusing on different things. And so I just wanted to include a list of what you can be doing at general life stages around supporting self-determination and growing decision-making skills within school activities. So in the early elementary years, you can include opportunities that allow students to make choices, exert control, see and understand that choices are limited. We can't pick whatever we want. We're going to choose from a group of possibilities. We encourage you to promote early problem solving skills, including asking for help, and that be a positive thing. Sharing the process out loud so that others can hear your thinking and have you reflect on the outcomes based on your thinking and support you in that reflection. To self-evaluate their work. And a lot of times in the younger grades, we use rubrics and we give them those ahead of time. But when you incorporate choice making into their daily activities, especially students with disabilities, they've seen that higher level of task engagement that I talked about before and less problem behavior. And I think in 2023, when I'm hearing from a lot of the teachers that I know that there's behavior across the classroom since they're back in the classroom, ways to re-engage students. This might be a nice way to do it, to make sure that choice making is at a higher level and they have more say and input into their activities in the day. In late elementary, you might look at choice making, but start making it about weighing the pros and cons of a choice and sharing that prior to making a decision. Looking at past decisions and evaluating the outcomes before you talk about what your next decision might be. Setting and committing to goals and tracking those. Asking for support and feedback on something that happened after you made a decision. And monitoring progress of decision making. This can be done when they're doing group work and they evaluate each other in their participation in a group, for example. Also self-evaluating and identifying ways that they can improve their outcomes based on what they learned. All pretty, for educators, pretty obvious, but I just want to make sure we tap into them a little bit. At transition, you're going to include things like participating in decisions that are ongoing and affect them day to day, right? Their academics, their schedules, and having them reflect on their choices each year to influence what their choices are next year. Identifying that role of day-to-day decisions or expectations on those long-term goals, right? What did I do today that really is going to impact that bigger decision I have down the road? And I would say a lot to my kids as this kind of became ingrained into our family conversations. I would say to them, when something happened, when they made a decision, when they were viewing the outcome, I said, so how does that fit in your trajectory? And it really gave them that visual of, I've got a bigger place I'm trying to go and not get bogged down in the decisions. And I've got one that's college age right now, and she's in the middle of finals. And there's a lot of decisions made in the moment because I just need to get it off my plate, and trying to tune back into that evaluative process of, what is this decision now? How is that going to impact my bigger decision down the road? And the other choices that I have. So recognizing the little decisions that we do day to day and connecting them to their longer term goals. Developing a checks and balance system that helps them highlight their progress on a goal and helps them adjust and change their mind, which you've heard me say a million times, but it's super important to the process. Broadly outside of age range, make sure we're offering them opportunities and input and involvement in their own education and planning process. I know this takes more time. I know as family members, we're often afraid to have them come into those spaces because we often talk about what they can't do. You can make a designated time or space for that at the beginning of the meeting or wrapping up at the end of the meeting, and having them utilize these tools for them to discuss what's important to them and how they think school can best, or classroom or a teacher can best support them. It can be a huge gift, just that one-page person-centered description, to offer input into their IEP. And then as teachers and professionals, making sure those words get into the document where it's appropriate, because seeing my own words reflected in the document means a lot in terms of team building and in confidence, and for that student in decision making. Offering frequent age-appropriate opportunities for using communication and listening and assertiveness, that ability to say no that we saw back on the previous document or previous slide. Consistent opportunities for self-monitoring and self-evaluation, and talking about it in a way that's comfortable and not critical, so that I can learn from it but not be shamed by it. Utilizing strengths-based approach for choice, with a safe place to make mistakes, because we all make mistakes. And then partnering with parents so that you can support the family vision and help them see how their opportunities for collaboration are going to help build self-determination and decision-making, because ultimately that gives me the life that I want to live. So when we talk about charting the life course, we talk a lot about the ability to do this across what we call the charting the life course domains. And we want to be able to do this across domains with the support that's needed. And the supports may vary for decision making in each domain. I might be pretty confident to make decisions in daily life or employment, but I might really need help in healthy living. Or I might be very confident to make social decisions, but when it comes to financial decisions, it's not my strength. So however we grow in our skills across time, and we don't want to assume an independent role in making choices and decisions every time, all the time. We want to make sure that they recognize that all of us ask for help in making decisions because we have different types of strengths. But ultimately, what we're trying to make sure happens there is that we help them get in touch with knowing themselves at that level that will help them be more confident in decision makings and holding themselves at the center of that decision. So knowing how you want to spend your time, knowing what's important to you at home or in your community, how to stay safe and who can help you stay safe, understanding who you care about and who cares about you, because that'll make a difference in how you ask for help or who you ask for help. That you understand that and share with others what's fun and interesting to you, what you like and what you don't like. So many kids that I know who graduated from and left school didn't know what they liked. They liked pleasing the adults in their life. And so it took them a long time to get the confidence to figure out what was important to them and what they like. So if we can encourage those conversations and them speaking those things out loud earlier, the better off they're going to be. Understanding about their own disability and their healthcare needs. It's a big place where we see students deference in their ability to be part of decision making in their own health. And so helping in that way consciously and helping support the family to do that is really important. And then understanding the laws and the rules that affect them and how to get involved in the community so you have a sense of purpose and that you can have an impact on those laws and rules that affect you, and building that advocacy. A great tool to do this with Charting the Life course is our experiences and questions book. And in that book, they'll go through each life stage within each domain and talk about things that you can begin to consider, encourage, and talk about. So when you look here more closely, if you haven't seen this tool, please go look it up. I don't know if Tracy or Erica could put it in the chat for me, or maybe they already did because they're magical that way. You'll look at each life stage. So here in school age, it asks questions in the social and spiritual range about personal relationships, leisure and recreation, and spiritual enrichment. More importantly, when you look at this and you see those stars, each one of these questions is helping the student build skills in self-determination and becoming a stronger decision maker. Are you helping me get involved with and be included in extracurricular activities in school and the community? Have you helped me explore clubs or other school activities in which I might be interested? Learning what our interests are. All of those things help us understand ourselves better and help us make stronger and better decisions. Again, in employment, the employment domain, again, you'll see each stage, and it goes on and does transition, young adult, and adult. So go, and then into aging. So each one, but these blue dots or stars each tell us things that we should be thinking about, considering in order to build self-determination. With whom do I spend the majority of my school day? How am I included at school with my typical peers? You can go down to employment. And do you ask me what I want to be when I grow up? Helping me differentiate pros and cons to different things, imagining myself in other places. Do I have an after-school routine? Am I expected to follow the rules like the other children, and with consequences when I don't, etc. All building that self-determination. And with self-determination comes the ability to make stronger and better choices. So these quick guides really support conversations at any age. They encourage opportunities to make choices, set goals, assume responsibility, and drive one's own life. They encourage opportunities to learn about new places and things, build community connections, develop confidence, and learn responsibility. And they encourage experiences that support individuals' growth into self-determined, autonomous, and independent people. So it's all geared towards that person-centered knowing of yourself, self-determined, and setting goals and seeing what I can accomplish with that dignity of risk, right? So there's several tools in Charting the Life course, I'm watching my time, that are specific to decision making that I wanted to make sure that you knew existed. So this particular tool, and I'm going to zoom on, and these are available on the website also. But this is what we used to call it, the stoplight tool. But this really is a supported decision-making tool. It's a tool to evaluate. I'm sorry, it's not a little clearer. I hope you can see it well enough. But it's a tool that helps you evaluate where you are in the ability to make decisions in different areas of life. Am I able to decide if or where I want to work? I can decide with no extra support. I need support with my decision. I need someone to decide for me. And I almost want to have a document that says, I have never thought about this or talked about this, because there are going to be questions here, but you could just pick one or two and again, begin the conversation. Do I know what I want my day to look like? And what I want my day to look like at 18 is going to be different than what I want my day to look like at 22 or at 30. And so those vary, but it goes through each domain and helps you begin to evaluate. And then families or school teams or students can say, you know what, I really want to be the one who decides where I work and what I do. And then a team or a family can go, okay, let's think about where your skills are. Let's do a trajectory. Let's look at some of the other tools and talk about what we need to do and how we can support you to get to that point if you're not already there. Because again, it's going to be that experiences. Some of it's going to be just trying different jobs and going, maybe not. So it's each varies with other opportunities. But as you can see, it does this in each domain and just gets those conversations about, you know, am I able to make a plan in case of an emergency? Do I know and understand my rights? Do I recognize and get help if I'm being treated badly? And this is something parents talk about a lot, is that ability for them to ask for help or to recognize when someone's mistreating them. So it begins that conversation. Even if it isn't a tool that is used and filled out, keying into these questions and helping families think about them, or families beginning to talk through it with partners or with their siblings to think about these things, really just enhances how you think every day. Kristen, yes, they are in the public domain, and they, as printed, now you're going to get into copyright and things like that. I don't believe if you use them as a whole, they want people to use them and share them. If you can share with them that where it came from, that's all I think would be expected, is that you'd say this is done at UMKC through Charting the Life Course Nexus, and they're available at this website. So all of these are available, yeah. And so in addition, whoops, here we go. They have a supported decision-making portfolio. So as we saw that star, as we saw the trajectory, and we saw the one-page person-centered description, those three tools together are called a Charting Life Course portfolio. They have a supported decision-making portfolio that should have come to you with your notice today when you got your link to attend the meeting. It should have been attached, but they are all public domain and available on the website. But as you see this trajectory, they've been a little bit more thoughtful of it, and they look at that vision for what they want, but they ask, what are the decisions and choices that I want to make for myself or get help from supporters? And they can identify those. I want help with money, but I don't want help with roommates. I want help with grocery shopping, but I don't want help with money, which would be counterintuitive, but and in addition, we don't lose sight of our larger vision. I want to live on my own in the community. So again, how are we talking about these decisions and choices and building the ones that are going to be necessary to support that larger goal? In addition, what do I not want? What are those things that are not a good life to you? And what decisions and choices do you not want someone to make for you, right? And identifying those boldly, right? And then over here in those past life experiences, what's helped me understand the issues and my options, what's helped me communicate, and what's helped me follow through. And then looking at the past barriers and listing those. And then finally in the middle here, What do I need now to help me understand the issues and the options? And what do I need to help me communicate my preferences and choices? And you could do these very specific to moving out. You could do this broader in life. It really has the flexibility to be any or all. But ultimately, what we're trying to do here is start to build that space where students are thought of as decision makers. And it's not something that we can think of at the last minute. It takes time to build that skill. But there is a level of visibility that comes with being someone that gets to make decisions in their own life, at whatever level they choose, and as long as we're trying to grow those skills. So there's a lot of times kids won't want to be part of decision making, but that always offering that opportunity until they do, or if they do, offering that opportunity. You know, often as parents, I can share that we find out they had a different opinion, but they didn't share it. And so recognizing that maybe more than one ask, maybe breaking it down to a smaller decision, you know, maybe it's a decision that they're more invested in, that matters more to them, which sometimes are the ones that are harder to let them have that opportunity. But I love this quote that nothing is more difficult and therefore more precious than being able to decide. That right of making your own decisions, choosing who you talk to about them, and doing it together or not, is something that is an inalienable right that we lose sight of in day to day. I went to a parenting seminar way back in the day when my oldest, who's now 30, was really little. And the keynote speaker asked, how old is a child when they can dress themselves? And, you know, people were saying 3, 4, 5. And it was, you know, Velcro was all the rage at the time. It was brand new. That's how old I am. But in that space, people were kind of going into that, you know, pre-K, preschool age. She said, no, actually 1, because they can ask for help. And if you don't care what they look like, they can dress themselves at 1. It's our limitations placed upon them that prevents them from making the decisions. It takes too long. It doesn't match. It's inside out. It's on the wrong foot, etc. I don't have time to have this conversation with you. I don't want you to wear that, right? And it's no different when they're older. And so recognizing that it's a privilege to be a part of this process and thinking about that from the space of how, especially in those transition years, how we work with students, how we encourage families to work with students in order to grow that space, so that when we hit the age of 18, we're not all of a sudden, boom, at that age of majority conversation that we all loved so much, of whether or not they're ready to be out there in the adult world making all their own decisions. Let's do it sooner. Let's do it earlier. Let's build in those things that work with the appropriate supports and know what they are, so that we can move forward and continue that growth in adulthood. So you can learn more about this. This will be recorded and placed up on the Family Resource Network of Ohio website. This is a great website to go to more trainings. There are a whole group of trainings that those that are in education should be notified of. If you are not, please go to FRNO and fill out our listserv under contact or under trainings. No, yeah, I think. And fill out your information, and then you'll get our emails. There are a lot of opportunities, but make sure you look at them, because there's some really great stuff coming down the pike. We're going to have a family series. And so if you know of students or families that would benefit from this, it's a great time for them to jump in. And it's going to be across, I believe, 6 weeks, where students and families can work together with these tools directly with weekly support to do so and learn it. There's lots of other opportunities coming up, but I hope that you'll continue to come to these. We've tried to make a lot of the ones around education in the later afternoon, so you can continue to attend. Remember the folks that made it possible for us to be here. We are going to have a community of practice meeting on Thursday. These are quarterly and they are all education. And you are invited to attend and share and grow this place where people are passionate about these types of conversations of how we truly support students and families in the education space with these tools and with this framework. I want to open up for questions if anybody has any. But we got done a little bit early. I got a whopping 10 minutes left that you get back to your day as I raced through it.